In this lesson, you will learn about equivalent fractions. What are equivalent fractions? Equivalent fractions are fractions that show the same amount, but they have different numerators and denominators. If we look at this model, we can see the circle on the left has one part shaded out of two equal parts. This represents 1/2 of a whole. In the circle on the right, two parts are shaded out of the four equal parts in the circle. This represents 2/4. 1/2 and 2/4. These fractions have different numerators and denominators. However, the same amount of each shape is shaded. Therefore, these two fractions are equal. We call them equivalent fractions. We can also create equivalent fractions using a different model, fraction bars. In the first bar, we have divided one whole into three equal parts. You can see that one of the three parts is shaded in. Therefore, this model represents 1/3. In the second model, we divided one whole into six equal parts. Two of the six parts have been shaded in. Therefore, this model represents 2/6. Even though the numerators and denominators in these fractions are different, the same amount of each shape is shaded. Therefore, the fractions 1/3 and 2/6 are equivalent fractions. We can use number lines to determine whether or not fractions are equivalent. The first number line is divided into two equal parts. The second number line is divided into 8 equal parts. If we shade one of the two parts in the first number line, we are representing 1/2 of a whole. If we shade 4 parts of the 8 equal parts in the second number line, we are representing 4/8 of a whole. Once again, we have two fractions with different numerators and denominators. The same amount is shaded on each number line. This means that the fractions 1/2 and 4/8 are equivalent. A common mistake many students make is thinking that fractions that have different numerators and denominators are not equivalent. Let's take a look at the fractions 1/2 and 3/6. We can clearly see that the numerators 1 and 3 are different, and the denominators 2 and 6 are different as well. However, if we make a model of 1/2 and then we make a model of 3/6, we can see that the same amount of each shape has been shaded in. Therefore, 1/2 and 3/6 are equivalent fractions. Fractions are equivalent if they represent the same amount. Let's look at 1/2. If we create a model of 1/2, we will have two equal parts and one part will be shaded in. If we look at that model in a different way and separate it into 4 equal parts and shade 2 of them in, the second model represents 2/4. We can clearly see by the amount shaded in both models that 1/2 and 2/4 are equivalent fractions. If we look at the same model in yet another way and divide it into 8 equal parts and shade 4 of them in, we can see that 4/8 covers the same amount of space as 2/4 and 1/2. Therefore, 4/8 is equivalent to 2/4 and 1/2. These three fractions represent the same amount. They are equivalent because they all cover the same amount of one whole. In this lesson, you have learned to identify equivalent fractions using fraction circles, fraction bars, and number lines.